Om Shanti. Good morning to all of you. And of course, welcome from the heart. Welcome for those of you for whom it's the first time. Welcome back home. And you all know, for those of you who have been here twice, thrice, 30, 50 times, that this is going to be a place that you will be changed by. And so the accumulation of vibrations, of the people, I sometimes feel that when we're here, it's as if all karma is suspended and that things happen in a very spontaneous and natural way, and because your feelings and thoughts are so very elevated, they are instantly reciprocated. And so what are your expectations when you're here? Do we call them expectations? Because when we think of expectations, there's often a little bit of perhaps a not so nice connotation. And expectations is not a word that I've ever heard Baba use, nor is it one that I think I've heard Daddy Janki used. And I don't know what the translation might be in Hindi for this, but as close to it and more elevated in Baba's language would be hopes. What are Baba's hopes for you? And doesn't that give an entirely different feeling? That when you have hopes, it's almost like as if you are seeing a great potential within the other, and that you trust that in time and with the right nourishment that it will thrive. Whereas sometimes with expectations, has someone ever said to you, these are my expectations for you? And often with that there might come a little bit more of a feeling of heaviness. It's kind of like, do it or else. And what I see that to the extent that we operate out of a place of limited expectations of others or from others, that it is more to do with our needing them to be or behave in a certain way so that my stage can remain okay. Whereas the idea of hopes in another is more about a generosity and a vision. And it's almost like as if there's a natural tendency to move towards the hopes that someone has in you, the seniors, Baba, than the expectations, which can be at some level an imposition. And I know that this came up the other day in a class with Daddy. I wasn't here, but what I understood was that someone had referred to Daddy Ji, I think, and then people having that same expectation from Daddy Janki. And so Daddy said, from expectation to acceptance, in other words, acknowledging, in a sense, the uniqueness of each and every one of us, even in the ways, as Gopi was saying, that we might express love or whatever it happens to be. And so, just in very general terms, this acceptance of within the context of the whole Brahman life and philosophy, and even the world in general, my own uniqueness, and then coupling that with Baba's hopes for me. So very simply, and hand it off to one of my brothers, my twin, or
when Waddy calls me her twin, excuse me, over so many years, so many people have seen us and asked us whether we are sister and brother, like Lockig sister and brother. I don't know whether you feel that, but so many times we have been asked.
So many.
I love something she said, that, you know, our karma is suspended when we come to Madhaban. Do you feel that? Then who would like to stay here permanently? Who would like as the karma teach stage naturally? You know, actually, Waddy was just saying to me before we started about some of my personal experiences when I started with Baba. Because, you know, I think the reality of life for me is that we have to face so many expectations. It's just the nature of the world in which we live, mostly from the self, you know, of course from others around us and the world. You know, there's this almost this constant pressure that all of us grow up in. And when I came to Baba, I was quite young, I was just 22, and I came to Madhaban for my first visit. I'd been with Baba just for 2 or 3 months. I often feel that we're only attending the centre for a matter of weeks, and Daddy sent us off to Madhaban. I think she was frightened we'd all run off somewhere, so she thought, you know, get them there. And my first meeting with Baba, because I wonder whether you would call it expectations or hopes, because Baba's hopes, there's something extraordinary in Baba's drishti that kindles something really deep in the soul. And my first meeting with Baba was in the history hall. You could imagine I was 3 months in Gyan, I was so new, and there was probably, if I remember, it's hard to remember clearly, 50 or 60 people in the hall. And as soon as Baba's Muli finished, we were called up. The double foreigner season was 3. There was 3 of us. And I sat in front of Baba, and Baba would always, as he still does, meet with long drishti. And the feeling was quite remarkable, and it's something I reflect on all the time, that it was almost like Baba's drishti was like a laser beam that looked really deep in the soul. It searched the memory track. And it's like Baba fell on a part of me, if I can say the original me, the pure me, and massaged that to the surface, almost like introduced me to who I could be, my potential. It's like the hopes he had in myself. And I really felt that I was a changed person, you know, from that first meeting. And I've always, you know, when you come in front of Baba, it's amazing. It's not like an expectation, like what he said, that you can sometimes get from others that makes you heavy. It's an expectation that makes you light and fills you with courage to actually bring change. Because another time I was meeting Baba a few years later, just around this subject, and I started in London and I went back to Australia, and I was in Sydney, and once again, you know, I'd only been a BK myself for a few years, and suddenly, you know, you're running the centre, and it was a sink or swim situation, so to speak. And there was a few things going on in the centre, you know, a few problems. And I met Baba, and Baba gave me drishti, and his question was, is everyone happy with you? And I knew a few people weren't happy with me, so I didn't say anything. And this is the wonder of Baba. And then Baba said, the majority are happy. And just to make me feel good, you know, Baba actually went on to say, you know, some aren't happy with Baba. This is what Baba said, some aren't happy with Baba. He said, some are thinking, why did Baba meet this one longer than me? Baba gave a better blessing to this one than me. So it was almost this lovely, you know, Baba was actually making me feel good in that way. And in a sense, just saying that the reality, I think it's a huge subject, but when we step onto surface, people do have expectations of us, and how do we then, you know, work with those expectations? I think maybe we can discuss that, but let Nizar share something.
Good morning, Om Shanti, thank you. You know, in front of these 2 spiritual giants, I'm physically bigger, but spiritually much smaller, because I have been in Gyan probably half that time, about 18 years. And I was also very slow arrival. You know, it was not like magic for me. It wasn't like I came to Madhuban 6 months after I was first introduced to the BKs. And it wasn't like bells and whistles for me when I met with Baba. I was quite disappointed, actually. Because maybe I was expecting something quite different. And coming from the corporate world, we hear the word expectations much, much more than we do in our Brahmin life, I think. Because, you know, we are constantly judged, and we judge people constantly. And so our judgment barometer is that we say that's what we expect from you. And at the beginning of each year, people get target letters, and they're told, well, that's what we expect you to be judged by the end of the year. And then when their appraisals happen, you know, it's against that they are judged. So it's quite a hard and cruel world out there. And I think that we grow up in that atmosphere, all of us, and we set expectations for ourselves also. And you know, if somebody said to us, well, do you expect to be in Satyuga, or are you okay with the end of the Silver Age? Will you accept that? And I'm sure all of us say, no, we expect to be in Satyuga, don't we? And so I think where there are positive expectations, even of us, I think we accept that quite easily and say, yes, I expect to behave in a certain way. I expect myself to be at that level and will not accept lower. I think hope is a nicer word, as what he says quite rightly. But I think as soon as we say something which is not so positive, you know, we say we expect to be respected, then it's negative. Then we say, well, that's not right. You shouldn't, because then you're going to be disappointed. So you should accept the way that you are being treated because you don't want to be disappointed. So don't expect that. But expect from yourself, you know, something which is higher. I think comparisons is what, I also wasn't at that Dadi Janki's interview where Manda was asking the question. I think it was that Manda was saying, what do you feel about being expected to be like Dadi Prakashmani? I think that was the question. And then Dadi was saying, no, I don't want to be like her, because none of us want to be compared with because we are all different. And so I think that when somebody expects us to be like somebody else, then we don't want that, because that we consider to be negative. Each one of us have different views. I will come back again and to explain, because I've left this halfway about what my first meeting with Baba was. But go ahead. Yeah, I think it was that I was expecting different things. In those days, in '92, we used to have groups that used to come in front of Baba after Murli. And I remember very clearly I was in group number 6, November the 5th, 1992. And I had heard the Murli, and I was saying, well, it's okay. I love the knowledge, But Baba coming in Dadi Gulzar was something I thought I was a bit far-fetched. Particularly, you know, the casual way, in the casual way in which everybody stood around Baba. You know, there was a little Mohini band, you know, with her hands in her pocket in a cardigan, and I thought, that's God supposed to be next to you. But, you know, it was that we don't realize in the beginning that, you know, this is a family. And so it's your father, and so you can be casual. So it was a different kind of expectations. And then Baba was asking this question when we first sat in that group, and saying, have you come here to die, or have you come here to look around? And I was thinking, yeah, look around. Because, you know, my teacher was Nikki, and Nikki wanted to get me into Madhuban. She was really forcing me, because she first sent me to London to meet with Dadi Janki, and that was another negative experience for me. But then she wanted me to come very quickly before I went backwards, to come and meet with Baba, for Baba to do his magic. And so I was saying, yeah, I've come to look around. And, you know, he was giving drashti and also asking that as he went around. And each time he asked that, have you come to look around? And then he asked and said, you haven't come here because the instrument teacher forced you, have you? I say, yeah, that's right. But then, you know, I was taking a little more notice by this time, you know, because he was sort of everything I was thinking about, he was speaking. And then he said, because next time he asked that again, you know, have you come here to die or to look around? And I wasn't saying so strongly to look around. I thought maybe there might be something in here. Then he said, did you change your mind in just 1 minute? You haven't been fooled, have you? He said, when you have made such a bargain with God Himself, trust your intellect that you made the right decision. Because, you know, we come, particularly, you know, we are very suspicious business people. Most of you don't know, but I had the Brahma Kumaris investigated by Dun & Bradstreet before. And I got quite a thick file in those days. I also went to 35 centers in my first year, you know, to have including what is in Miami, because I was looking to see, you know, what they were saying and what they do, whether there was an equality. So, you know, it was that expectations that we had and what were we willing to then accept. But of course, when you come to Baba in front of God, then of course, it's a totally different ballgame. And, you know, you need to act in a very different way than you would in a corporate world. So, I think that expectations were very different. It really was bells and whistles, and then you begin to realize that this is a different way in which you need to behave. So I think on the whole, I think it can be positive and negative what your expectations are, depending on what you see with your eyes.
Just a comment while Nazarbai is speaking. And sharing his experience of how, as if Baba was reading his mind and instantly speaking his thoughts, and in the same way with Charlie, and that many of you here may not even have had that experience of being able to be part of a small group or to meet Baba individually, and yet you have such faith. I remember meeting a group some time ago, and it was their first meeting with Baba. And so I was asking them afterwards if they had recognized Baba, and really, it was a question for me, and I was expecting some of them to maybe say, not really, because the contrast in when we had met Baba in a very small setting, very few people, very intimate, and here we were in Shantivan, and everything was different, and there wasn't that physical closeness with Avivek Bap-Dada. And unanimously, everyone said yes, they had recognized Baba. And then I asked them, and which was even more of a surprise for me, their answer, but pleased me greatly. I asked them, did Baba recognize you? And they were instant in their affirmation that they felt that Baba had recognized them. So this is one of the wonders of Baba and of the whole yajna, that we all came at different times, all had different entry points, and yet each one has an individual relationship with Baba, and through that the faith is developed or increased. And so just being reminded of that in hearing Charlie and Nazarbai share their experiences. And so wondering about your expectations, and one thing is, what are the expectations from Baba? What are the expectations you feel that your instruments have for you, seniors, etc.? And what are your expectations for yourselves? Are all of them different? Do they sync with each other? Or is one easier or more difficult than the other? Or would be getting one correct lead to the balance of all of them? And perhaps maybe it's something that Charlie could speak to in terms of your experience, you know. Do you feel that Baba's expectations are more your expectations for yourself, or that other people have greater expectations of you?
I'll share a little bit about that, but just before I go on, I was just remembering when Nizar was sharing about his first meeting with Baba. That first time when I took drishti from Baba, he then asked me 2 questions. And just imagine I'm 2.5 months or 3 months in Gyan, so after long drishti, Baba said, do you have one Shiv Baba and none other? And I don't know, that's a lot of expectation, actually. And then he went on and he said, are you stable on drama? And the first question I said, he said, do you have one Shiv Baba and another? I said, yes, Baba, because you can't say no in front of Baba. And then he said, are you stable on drama? And I said, yes, Baba. Should have definitely said no to that question. But it's a little bit like I said before, somehow Baba's incredibly deep, powerful, good wishes for the soul, it almost takes you to that place where you know you can step into his vision. You know that, I think that's the wonder of Baba's vision, because I've often thought the different types of vision that the soul, has, it's the vision of the self, and for most of us we come here with a very distorted vision of the self. There's the vision of others on me. There is the vision of the world, and there's the vision of Baba. And I think those hopes from Baba are on one side. On the other side, I think that for me, definitely, it's expectations on the self which have been, I think the most challenging. Because when I came to Baba, I think I had that sanskara of wanting to please people, And that almost, it's like you can spend a lot of time, and I think many of us may know this, trying to please people. Can you do it? Can you really please others? I don't think so. But I think, I've often thought about it over the years, that ultimately when I know deeply, not just that I'm a soul, but I sort of know my sanskaras, I feel that the expectations start to reduce. When I start to become really wise about myself, and I know a big breakthrough for me in my Brahman life was when I really began to accept, if I can say, what I know I'm okay at, you know. There's certain things you feel confident, you know it's your sort of fundamental personality or way, and there's other things you're not so good at. But you know how often you try to be everything to everyone? Mm-hmm. But actually accepting, yeah, I'm okay at this, but I can't do this so well, and being happy about that, I think it's been an important thing for me. But I feel personally, when we start in Brahman life, that often we try to live up to an image. You know, Baba speaks at this level in the Murli. And that can be, I think, very stressful actually in some ways, because Baba's talking about here, and inside so much other stuff is happening, you know. And yet on the surface we look the part. We've got the white clothes, we wear the badge, you know. We look the part, but internally, you know, and the expectation, trying to fill the gap between where Baba's talking about and where I am. And I think one thing, and I don't know what Nizar and Wadi feel, but one thing that's really helped me is to keep being aware, to have the highest aim, but understand I'm in a process. Mm-hmm. I'm in a process of change. Yeah. And in a process, sometimes things work, sometimes things don't work. And I think early on, you know, after those times, sometimes when we start, when we're not successful, you know, with quality thinking and yoga and so on, we can have that heavy-handed approach on the self. I really learned that I have to learn to accept myself and let go. I think nothing is more damaging in Brahman life than that sanskara of self-rejection. You know, that sanskara where you know, and I think just accepting, I'm in a process of change. Just being here is successful. Just being here, I think I can say, that's incredible. And, but to let go that expectation, that pressure I put on myself, I think is, it takes a lot of wisdom to accept myself. I don't know what Wadi and Nizar feel about that journey.
Go ahead, Nizar.
You know, I like this idea. I work on that myself, that not to let your expectations of you to be lower, to keep them there, but to know that you're on a journey and you're taking steps. And I think that way you are content at each level, but keep reminding yourself that you need to get to that level. And I think so. That idea I've worked with all my life, that, you know, keep going on that journey. Don't let your expectations go down, but know that the process is sometimes slower than you want.
It's a gradual.
Yeah, and so there's the, you know, just that image that perhaps it begins with your parents, and their expectation is that you will go to college, university. You will go to college or university, but you have to go to, you know, grade school first and high school and all the rest of it. That's a given, that we all have to go through the same steps. A little bit of variety, but nonetheless, you can't miss out any steps. And so it's like when it comes to expectations, expectations are to do with the future, but acceptance is what you do in the present. You know, you accept where you're at. And then I would suggest too that in terms of even the past, because that sometimes gets in the way in an inability to accept that. And so accepting it is just one thing, but then a stage further is where you have an appreciation of it, that it is part of the whole and a necessary component in terms of your growth, in terms of your movement, in terms of being where you are now at. I think that appreciation is a very, very big part of it, and that will allow you to keep moving.
I think as we've all been sharing, I think it's the biggest learning curve. And I think even recently in this season, Baba almost described soul consciousness as self-respect. And I think a few times Baba's described that, and it's this extraordinary journey back, isn't it, from all the expectations of others and the self, to a place where I really accept myself in like all the scenes of drama around. And one thing I found personally is that I think, after some time of practice, we really settle into a sense of, I would say, self-acceptance. But I don't know, but sometimes I've found some BKs have acceptance of the self, but not so much acceptance of their part in the drama. Maybe they're related too, they don't feel so comfortable with the role that I'm playing, and often that sort of sense of comparison with others around me creates a lot of expectations and discontentment. And I've often felt that sanskara we come into Gyan with, we sort of identify with what I do rather than who I am. It's such a deep sanskara. And even though I settle into Brahman life, I follow principles, I feel much better. There's self-acceptance, but often when I step onto the service field, there's so many comparisons and then upheaval and looking at, this one playing that role and that one this role. And I think to not only be sort of happy with who I am, but happy with, what I'm doing, I feel is a really sort of important thing. And that's why sometimes I think, we let go the gross ego when we come into Brahman life, the gross ego of the world, but almost within Brahman life we rebuild a sort of subtle form of ego within the service field, And I sometimes feel as soon as Baba says, you put up your hand, say, Baba, I want to help in your task, it starts to flush out a whole lot of sanskaras to do with responsibility, controlling nature, bossiness, possessiveness, all that sort of stuff that can come in and create discontent in the way that I'm doing things. And I feel to even step out of identifying with that, that expectation of the self to have a good role, to be something, I think that takes a lot of maturity, doesn't it, and spirituality, really. A lot of spirituality, actually.
A lot of spirituality. And part of what you're saying, although maybe a big topic too, but it's to do with a kind of an acceptance will, I think, there will be a connection with humility when there's an acceptance. And we're not talking about the acceptance that is a resignation, that's it, that's as much as I'm capable of doing or whatever. And ultimately it is just about you and your journey at one level. And so sometimes when we come to Baba, we may feel, as Charlie's inferring, that we have come with certain qualifications or standards or capacities, capabilities or whatever. And unless they are somehow changed, and we recognize that at one level, without being sanctimonious, that we're really not capable of very much, then it's like as if Baba can make all of those things, can spiritualize them or divinize them, as they say, and make them work. Where if I think, I can do it, no bother, I'm capable, I'm the best, then it's almost like even if you think, and I hope it's not contrary to what we're saying, if you think, I'm very good, watch out. You're going to be challenged in a sense. Every statement you make, everything you say like that, it's almost like as if, it's almost like as if we're issuing a challenge to, if you want to say Maya or whatever, and Maya gets her fun out of challenging us. And it's almost like as if, well, I'm going to see how good you are or how capable you are. You know, I was thinking, very, very simple thing for me, where sometimes the thought of good health or that I'm able to be active, and then all of a sudden, you know, I find I'm not able to do that. And it's the feeling that because you were a little bit arrogant in thinking that or expressing that, you're going to be challenged. And the same thing where sometimes when you don't have expectations, in a sense, you can sometimes limit yourself by your expectations. You think that this is what needs to be achieved or done, but really Baba and Drama has an entirely different program going on. And so sometimes being able to acknowledge that it's not my capacity, I'm not capable, I really can't manage this, then Baba says, don't worry, child, I'll help, I'll do it. And so just this thing of this big, big lesson of, on the one hand, humility, which to me is first, it's about dealing with trying to be egoless. And we all know that the ego comes from some aspect of not feeling worthy enough to begin with. And that really is, the whole lesson is about self-respect, is about feeling worthy. And that for me is where it's at, and always coming back to that again, and that acceptance of where you're at the moment, not the whole story. Nizarbai.
Yeah, it's a struggle, constant struggle, what you're saying, you know, is between the standard that you set for yourself and pride and self-esteem. If you sell yourself short, then also you become not an achiever and somebody who says, c'est la vie, you know, that's it, I can't do more than that. But sometimes you're more capable than what you give yourself a chance of. So it is a struggle. You say it very well. I think that we constantly need to review. And you know, in that process, how much are we expecting of others also becomes a struggle. Because we can also set too high a standard of others, and then they are disappointed because they don't come up to our expectations.
Yes, exactly.
And sometimes people that you value set standards for you, which is good in a way, but that can also be a struggle for you if you are not capable of that. If you respect, you know, like Dadi Janki is good at this, you know, she will set standards for you. Sometimes, you know, you may feel a little bit disappointed, you know, because when she wants to push you a little bit, when she thinks you've gone into a little corner and needs to be woken up, every now and again she gives you a little bit of a current, you know, a shock. Once she said to me, you know, I was thinking, if Nizar leaves the body tomorrow, what have you achieved? I think you have achieved nothing. And I thought, what? But you know, she was just giving you that little shock and saying, you know, you haven't gone to sleep, have you? So sometimes that's a help to you, you know, in just making you, you know, mindful of, you know, are you doing what you're capable of? And sometimes it can be like, it's too much for you. Are we looking at the watch?
No, I'm wondering, Gopi, did you want us, did anybody want for to ask people? Okay, all right.
I was just going to pick up on what Nizar was saying, because I even remember Daddy sharing that she had such hopes in people, but sometimes they took those hopes as a pressure. And she began to realize that, you know, it's an interesting thing. You can sort of see someone, you feel where they can go, but in trying to have good wishes, sometimes it becomes a pressure rather than a help. And I mean, many times I think, you know, in our family, our attitude is the most powerful thing. And even once I remember Baba said, you serve outsiders with knowledge, but you serve the Brahmin family through attitude. And, you know, I've often felt that spiritual support as opposed to emotional support. You know, you really want to help other people, even the Brahmin family, and you help them and support them and encourage them. But I think spiritual support is holding the value of someone in your attitude, you know, and you keep that value regardless of what, you know, whether they're going up or down. It's like you accept, or you know their value. And I even remember one of the brothers that Waddy and I started with in London. He's such an amazing person now, but I can remember him once giving himself the title, now this is way, way, way back, as the most negative person in the world. That's what he'd said of himself. I mean, many people could do that, but he just said it was Daddy, when he would come to the center and he was in a real mood, but Daddy's vision of acceptance, and she saw something else in him that he couldn't see in himself at that time. Yeah. That belief, and I think, you know, when you hold the value of someone, have the belief in someone, then I think that's a huge support for that person.
I don't know if Charlie's talking about the same person, but it reminded me of again, when I came to Baba and the person who was my teacher. I met Charlie the first night, but then my teacher, and he has since moved away from Gyan, although he's still in contact, certainly with both of us. And the awareness that as he was giving me the lessons, the awareness wasn't then, but as I look back, that of course he was holding a vision of me and for me until I was able to take it up for myself, right? And so now, and since then, and since he's moved away, it is my duty, my pleasure, my karmic return, whatever, to hold that same vision for him until he can pick it up again. This is the way we give a return.
I think we are running out of time now.
No, it's okay. Nizar Bhai, I'm really, some of you may or may not know, but Nizar Bhai is currently involved in this huge project which kind of would have been a little bit similar to what he was involved with in Africa, but this was at one point referred to as Serve India, but the actual topic is the future of power. And so it's something very unique and something that hadn't been done before in the Brahmin family, and whereas Gopi Ben was saying that he's the activist, he jumps in there and starts doing before he knows what he's doing. And I'm really curious to know about his expectations when he started this venture, which is a few months ago, and where it's at now. Is it being tempered? You know, is there an acceptance of, is it going as well? Is it, can you just share some of that?
Yeah, I think that, as you rightly say, I do have the habit of jumping into things first and then thinking about it, but I think that the project is very good. I think it's something that, Baba wants us to do this, and I think that it needs to be done. I think that we are learning a great deal from it. You know, I think that having done 2 programs now, I think that we had probably underestimated what is required, not only from us, but also from the whole of the India family. I think that is a learning process for us. And I think that perhaps we were not as sensitive of that as we are now beginning to learn we need to be. I think that more and more responsibility also needs to be given to the Indian family. It's something we are learning. We are also learning that we don't know as much as we thought we knew. Not only about the Indian Brahmin family, but about India. I think that that is also something that's a huge, huge learning experience for us. I mean, it's a very exciting project, and I think that we've now got a breather of about 5 months, because the next city now will be in September. And I think that we will use this time really gainfully in planning much more and using the experience that we've had in the last 2 programs better. So yes, we did jump into it big time. But I think the 2 projects have been successful in many ways, and I think the quality of the people that came has been amazing. And what we've also learned is that the VIPs in India of the caliber that are coming are of much more humble than anywhere else in the world. And that is something which is refreshing.
Adi said something very nice the other evening. She was referring to Brahma Baba and the quality of soul that he was, and how much love Shiv Baba had given him. But she said because he was already a very powerful soul was one thing, but that because she was the child and not a powerful soul, then Shiv Baba had always given her extra love in order for her to fulfill his hopes.
Would anyone like to ask anything, make a comment? Valerian, is there a microphone up the front? There is. It's just coming, the microphone. Yeah.
Hello. I'm enjoying the conversation very much, and you touched upon something that I would be interested for the three of you to develop a little bit. You've talked about the expectations that we have sometimes, and that how much they make us suffer, basically. And I think that it would be interesting for the three of you to tell us how you've dealt with it yourself, so that people who still have expectations toward the Yagya, you were touching upon the roles that they have that they're not enjoying, or maybe the way they are moving forward and that they're not feeling so good about it. The three of you must have moved away from that many times, or must have dealt with it in different ways at different times. And I think it would be nice if you could share how you manage with expectations toward the Yagya, expectations from others on your part, and from your part yourself towards your own role. Thank you.
That's a lot. In a few minutes. Go, Charlie.
I think sometimes expectations of others or the seniors or the Yagya, sometimes when you can't fulfill it in yourself, you want others to fulfill the lack which I'm experiencing. And I feel there's such a powerful relationship, at least in my experience, between my sense of self-acceptance, my sense of contentment, and how I interact with the world outside, whether it is other people, the Yagya, the seniors, or whatever. Because there is that emptiness inside that we sometimes feel. And so we place that incredible expectation on others somehow to fulfill my own lack. And I really feel that as, when the soul really has deep understanding, I sort of need to look why I project onto others. If I can even first realize that I am projecting, why do I do it? It's a statement to myself of my own internal lack. And sometimes I think, Nizar was talking about his coming. This is God's organization, and we have an expectation of perfection, but we're all on the journey. And one thing that's really helped me in recent years is just, I would say, just really accepting the scenes of drama. Sometimes I think expectations on the actors in the drama, we want an outcome. You know how you have such a desire, I want this to happen, I want an outcome. And when it doesn't happen, we set ourselves up for huge disappointment. And I really am exploring so much more, just accepting each one's part, whatever level it's at. That's how Baba sees us. Just accept each one. That's the greatest service I really feel we can do. And so I think when I feel expectations, I begin to look, what's the seed of those expectations? What's actually driving my expectation, especially with seniors, because many of us really, project so much onto authority. And I think that's a whole fascinating subject, my relationship with authority, and why sometimes, I feel dissatisfied with authority. And some people, they're dissatisfied with this authority and then move to another, and temporarily they're happy and then become dissatisfied. It's like a permanent nature. It's so much to do with myself, isn't it, and my own story.
And I think too, in the Yagya doesn't tend towards titles. A few more titles have emerged, certainly since service started abroad. But by and large, the only titles here is brother, sister, father, mother, that's it. But sometimes the problem arises when, not so much in terms of brother or sister or the parent and the child, whatever, but when we start thinking in terms of instrument, center in charge, my senior, that these are where the whole thing of expectations come in. And so often at that moment, all I'm seeing is the role or the hat, could be, as you say, of authority, and I'm no longer seeing necessarily the individual. And that's where my expectations can be a little bit idealistic and unrealistic, because I assume that because you have these many years in Gyan, or you've been in charge, whatever it happens to be, then that your behavior should be this, your qualities should be that, and it's not necessarily the case. And so instead of my taking on at that moment the role of the teacher, if you like, recognizing that even as the very, very junior one, that I maybe have an awareness that I don't see in you at the moment, then instead of my complaining about you and allowing your lack of quality to influence me, can't I be the teacher at that moment? And even though I'm the junior one, and manifest those qualities, etc. And so for me, it's like, what helps me is I'm just dealing with human beings. You know, everyone is a unique individual. I loved how Sister Mohini once put it, that we're all referring to us as a book, that we're all reading the same book, but that we're all at a different chapter. And so you can't expect the person who's at chapter 2 to have the same understanding as the person who's on the 36th chapter. And so then this perhaps compassion or the ability to accommodate wherever anyone is at the moment, because we all know, we've heard this, we know it in our bones, but to manifest that aspect that whatever is going on, it is never about the other person. It's always me. That situation is only to facilitate my looking at something. And just like I was hearing Nizar Bhai say, where with great humility, that what started off as, you know, his expectation for a project or whatever, but suddenly became this learning thing from him, for him, that these were things that he hadn't seen, he hadn't understood. So the expectation is one thing, but you see drama, because all the while Baba in drama is wanting to educate us, is wanting us to learn. And so that's the only thing there is. So whatever anybody else is doing, it is for me to learn something from it. It's rarely about the other person. So that's what it always has to come back to. And most of us may know that as theory, but every now and again we're really able to practice it as well.
Yeah, I am for the practical approach. You know, even when Baba says, you know, will you do this? Raise your hands. And we are making a decision then and say, am I capable? Will I be able to do what Baba is asking me to do within that time frame? And I think when the seniors also ask us to do, I think we need to review that within ourselves and say, can I practically do what I'm asked to do? I think that if we just take it and then are not capable or find later that it's too much, I think that the negativity then that comes, it's very destroying, soul destroying for us. So, for example, I do for myself, every year I do several resolutions in 4 or 5 different sections of my life. So my business life, my personal life, my family life, and my spiritual life. And I set myself goals of what I am capable of achieving in that year, what I believe I should do. And these are not just, I don't just set goals that are, you know, on spur of the moment. I really think about them. And then I review them each month to say, what did I do this month compared to what I had planned? And I review at the end of the year what I had set myself up and what did I achieve and what can I do next year. So I think that all of us do this, whether in a practical way like I do, or in our thoughts. We set ourselves standards each year or each month or each time. And I think this is based on our knowledge of us and our capabilities. And we know ourselves better than anybody else. And I think that we need to be honest within and say, yes, I can do this, or, I can do part of this. This is the steps that we were talking about, Charlie and I, that set yourself that standard, but say, I'm content at the level I am now, not next month or next year, but I need to keep achieving so that I don't feel like I'm not doing anything. But I need to take steps according to my capabilities. But by all means, set standards, we need to do that. But I think it can be positive or negative depending on how much we stretch ourselves. That's my personal experience. Anyway.
Valerian was asking too about expectations of the yajna. In the same way that we are supposed to reflect Baba and Baba's organization or yajna, then we feel naturally that the yajna should also reflect us in terms of, our best qualities and our highest aspirations. And even then, it's still the yajna is made up of individuals. And by and large, I don't know if it's about expectations. See, that's the thing, is that we sometimes don't realize that we have expectations until something goes awry and you're confronted with the fact that you really were expecting this. Why wasn't acknowledged? Why didn't somebody say something? Why didn't somebody give me this, etc. But by and large, I think I don't think about it because I feel that it is doing what it's supposed to be doing for the most part. Somebody's got their hand up there, but I don't know. Yeah.
Yes, please. Gopi, we have time for one more question.
There's two there.
Okay.
There's two.
Yes, would you like to come up as well? And yeah, please come.
Well, I have actually two questions. My notion of expectation, particularly of others and in relationships, since I came into knowledge, has been that I have to get rid of it altogether. It's a term that really should not be in the lexicon, and nothing you've said here has dissuaded me from that. I think it probably confirmed that expectation is something that's akin to attachment, that once you begin to have expectation, it very, very subtly migrates to attachment when it's talking about expectations of other people and about circumstances. So my feeling, based on what I was thinking before and what you said, is that you really have to get rid of them. Wants and hopes, those are okay, but expectations that are specific and have particular the definition to them are real problematic, because that means there are going to be disappointments invariably and misunderstandings. So to me, expectations are like attachments. You need to kind of start getting them out of your system because they don't lead you anywhere positive. So, and I think you've confirmed that. So that's my comment. And I also would like to know, either here or some other occasion, about this power project in India, this India Power Project that Brother Nazir is involved in. I'm working in India now, and I'm very interested in this particular aspect because I'm dealing with people, and I'm coming to see some of these things that you were talking about. I would like to know more about that.
Maybe just picking up on what you were saying. I think one of the things, as I was just briefly touching on that, you know how in Brahman life you work on something for a period of time, or something comes really strongly into your awareness. And the thing that's really touched me over the last 6 months or so is the perfection of drama. That everything in drama is perfect. And in the body-conscious view of or perception of life, We put labels on the drama. This is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong. But the drama just is. And I think when that's the depth of the knowledge of drama sinks in, I realize that my expectations are just a lack of understanding. You know, I'm having outcomes of a drama that's already preordained. And it's like that whole thing, you make effort, but whatever is happening is going to happen, and it's perfect. Even if it's a seemingly not so nice scene in the drama, it is the way it is. And I found for me just accepting those things, which usually your old self wants to fight, you know, and fighting drama because we want outcomes of the drama. But a knowledgeful soul just... I remember once actually Daddy Janki telling us she was having lunch with Daddy G down in Shantivan, and Daddy... Something had happened, and Daddy said she sat down with Daddy, and for 5 minutes she sang, this happened, blah, blah, blah. And Daddy was eating, Daddy G was eating and looking at her. And when she finished, she just looked at Daddy Janki and went, drama? I can just see that scene, you know, just Daddy's... Yeah. And you know how we get so caught up in the details, and yet it's a drama, it's a perfect drama, and I think... You know, when we understand that, we won't have expectations of any outcome. The drama just is. And, you know, just going into the depth of drama is something very lovely. Oh, sorry, yeah.
Oh. This brother? Oh.
Spanish, English.
Ah, okay.
Ya. Yo soy de Perú, mi servicio es en Perú, me conoce Sister Wadi y Brother Charlie, sí me recuerdan. Y recuerdo que Sister Wadi me dijo que era un alma antigua. Y una vez estaba estando en Salamanca y le dijeron a Brother Charlie, le dijeron que yo estaba encargado porque la coordinadora está de viaje, hacía servicio. Y yo estaba con aretes todavía, y Charlie me miró y sonrió. Y empecé ahora a pensar sobre el tema de expectativas, y ahora es mi primer encuentro con Dios. Y se imaginarán las expectativas que puedo tener sobre eso.
He's from Peru, and he remembers meeting Wadi, and he remembers meeting Charlie. And at some point when he met Charlie, he still was wearing his earrings, and he remembers Charlie's smile when looking at his face, because he was in charge of something or the other. And now today he's facing his first meeting with God. So if you can imagine the level of expectation he's actually feeling inside.
Giancarlo es mi nombre. Y estuve pensando sobre expectativas y sobre lo que puede significar expectativas versus deseos puros. Estuve pensando que expectativas va más conectada con el tema de la acción, que se tiene que dar como yo lo pienso. Y deseos puros está conectado a que la realización del alma la va a hacer independientemente de cómo se dé la acción. Entonces mi pregunta es, con referente a las expectativas que tengo sobre mí, no sé cómo hacer. Ahora han aumentado tanto a lo que era mi vieja vida. Mi vieja vida no tenía expectativas sobre mí, pero ahora que conozco a Dios, eso ha sido muchísimo más grande, y no sé cómo resolver esas expectativas sobre mí.
He's saying that his understanding of expectation is related to action, and related to the self, he would call it pure desires. And before Gyan, he didn't feel he had an expectation towards himself. But now that he's in Gyan, he feels that his level of expectation is suddenly very present in his life. So his question is towards this: what to do with all this expectation one has towards oneself when one starts being in Gyan? And his name is Giancarlo.
Well, I think this is something that Charlie started off with, this idea that we're on a journey and that it's a process. And I don't know if it's just semantics and if it's about changing the word, but something that Nizarbai, a word that Nizarbai had used when he was talking about expectations or the aims that he has for himself, he spoke about standards. And I don't think of myself as what's the word I can use? Ambitious. I'm not ambitious by nature, and very, very much for me it has been a question of the flow of the drama, and that things have happened and they've always been so amazingly good. But I do, even though I don't think so much of myself as having expectations, but I do have standards. And sometimes it's more about what I don't do rather than what I do. And so to just become aware of your own standards and to meet those standards and to live up to those standards. And then as you do, that honesty, that a trust from other people, and it's like as if you just allow the drama then in a sense to serve you. And so it's not about being overcome with expectations. As I say, it's more about rooting yourself in the present and what you can do in each moment and in each situation as it arises. If you're going to keep filling your mind or your thoughts with what you should be doing and about what you're supposed to be doing and what you haven't done, then it's almost like a perverted form of effort, if you like. Because it feels laborious. It almost feels like as if you're making effort, but you really aren't. It's kind of a little bit of a dissipation or a wastage of your energy. And so to keep it very, very simple, like, what is my expectation in this very moment in relation to this soul? What should it be? What can be more simple than that? And sometimes I have to reduce it to that extent, to be just in the moment and emerge and see how easily it emerges, rather than, because if you're filling your head with all of the things that you have to be and should be and out there and tomorrow and so on and so forth, then the other thing can't happen. You've left no room for help from Baba or from the drama or from your companions. So you have to leave room for the good things to come in that make it easy for you.
I want to add to what Sister Wadi said in this, that as Brahmins, we are ancestor souls. We are Satyugi souls. We are the ones that go around the cycle, the whole of it. Everything is set around us. So we are the most achievers in the whole cycle. Mm-hmm. There's nobody who achieves more than what we do. Now, we don't get this just by being lethargic and saying what is, and we just leave it like that. We are naturally achievers. That's who we are. And so it's not complicated for us. It just happens that we are. We are what we are is because of our quality. And I think that is the self-esteem that we constantly have with us. It's not pride, it is a fact. It's just what it is. Baba says even the moon and everything, the stars and all of that are backdrops for you. They've been set, everything is done for you. So I think with this knowledge in the back of our minds, it's natural that we set very high standards for ourselves. Ideally, we should have expectations for us and not of anybody else. That would be the ideal world. And I think if we can achieve that, we've achieved a great deal.
Yes, I really liked what you were both just saying there, because in one sense, when we become Babas and we we reconnect with that part in the subconscious of the soul which was totally pure. Mm-hmm. And it's almost a natural expectation on the self to be there. I remember even one brother once, I was asking him about his journey, and he said once he tasted that the reality is that he has the blueprint of purity, and that's where Baba's taking, he felt a bit of, stress in a sense because of the difference of where his present stage is at. And it's always there in a way, because it's like invoking us, isn't it? It's sort of, but it's a pure expectation. It can be a pressure, but it can be an inspiration at the same sort of time, because it's sitting, it's invoking us to move there really quickly. It's a very interesting feeling. Anyway, what else should we... Gopi?
Do you need to make any announcement? Yes, that's a very nice thought, that idealism is because we were ideal. And just to make sure we never allow ourselves to become cynical.
Just want to say thank you. I think thank you from behalf of everyone here, because it's been a very gentle exploration of the subject, but very deep and meaningful. And I personally have taken a lot from it. And so I think on behalf of all of you, a lot of gracious thanks. And maybe we can close with a song, Suresh Bhai, a short meditation, a song to finish. And just to remind you all that tonight the program is going to begin half an hour earlier. So we'll have 5 to 5:30 meditation, and then 5:30 to 6:30 will be a class by Dr. Nirmala on the subject of reaching the Karmatit stage. And then at 6:30 will be the Madhuban gift giving ceremony. Shanti.